Welcome back to Central News. Changes are in the mix for companies. What will the change in loss attributing qualifying company rules, LAQC, mean for businesses? Michelle Malcolm, Associate Principal at WHK in Tauranga, joins me now. Michelle, first of all, for those that don't know and perhaps are looking to get into business, what is LAQC?
So an LAQC is a loss attributing qualifying company. So in the past, companies that maybe thought they might make a loss in their first couple of years, we would elect for them to become an LAQC. So what it would mean is, say, if you made a $50,000 loss and it was a mum and a dad, that those losses would flow through to mum and dad so that they could offset it against some other income in their personal tax returns if that was the case. A lot of rental properties were set up as LAQCs, so it was a good way for them to actually get the losses out to offset against their PAYE income that they might have. But unfortunately the government's decided that they're going to change those rules from the 1st of April, which was announced in their budget last year. So we're not going to be able to use an LAQC going forward how we used to use it in the past, unfortunately.
So what will this change mean for companies?
So what that will mean is, in particular for like rental properties is probably a key one, but there are other companies that they're going to have to review their structure because they're not going to be able to use an LAQC going forward. They're going to have to look at what other structures there are, if they're still going to be making losses, that maybe will give them the benefit of those losses flowing out to them personally. So it is quite an important issue, especially for people that have got a lot of rental properties, because generally that's what they would own them in.
So in the bigger picture for businesses, how big is this change for businesses?
For anyone that is currently in LAQC, it's a huge change because they're going to have to really look at what they're doing. So probably business-wise, it's more going to, as I say, it's people with rental properties and maybe people that have started up in business and they haven't sort of been able to make profits in the last few years, that have had losses. That's where they're going to have to look at what they're going to do if they are currently in LAQC. So probably a good thing is to find out whether you are one, because I think probably a lot of people out there don't know whether they are or they aren't. And what we are finding is that even companies, the IRD has a list of who they think are LAQCs, and we're checking them to make sure that that's what we think they are as well, because quite often we're finding that what the IRD's got isn't actually correct any longer, and that they might have fallen out of the regime sort of down in the past. So it is a really important thing, but as I say, if you're not sure whether you are an LAQC or not, best thing to do is actually go and ask your accountant, and even if you are, be asking your accountant what you should be doing going forward, because we do need to look at your structure and look at reviewing it.
So if I had shares in LAQC,
yes,
what are my options going forward?
Good question. So your options going forward are that you can just stay as a normal company, you can become a partnership, you can become a sole trader, you could become a limited partnership, which is very expensive, so probably that won't be a good option for people. And then there's going to be a new kind of company, which is going to be called an LTC, which is a look-through company. So that's a new company we've never had before, and so those are the different structures you need to be having a look at to see which one is going to best fit you. And that's where you really do need to be talking to your accountant, because there's a whole lot of questions we need to ask to make sure we actually put you in the right box, and not just assume that you're going to fit into this one, because one size doesn't fit all.
So how do you decide what structure is the best step forward?
What we look at when we're looking at that would be looking at whether you still are making losses, if you're going to be having capital gains down the track, and also what equity you're going to be holding in the company, because with the look-through company, if you elect to be a look-through company, there's certain rules now around losses, like you could be limited on your losses, and it's all around sort of your equity that you have in the business that can limit what your losses are going to be. So it is really important that we look at that, because if you've got a rental property and you might be very highly geared and been getting a lot of losses in the past, you might not be able to do that if we don't get your structure right. So it is really important that you don't just assume that, oh, it's going to be all fine.
So how is the look-through company taxed?
Well, yeah, good question. It's going to be taxed, and it's very transparent. So basically, it's a company, but everything like your income, your expenses, your RWT, your capital gains are all going to flow through to the shareholder. So it's going to be based on, if I own 50% of a company, I'm going to get 50% of the income and expenses flowing through to me in my personal capacity. So it is quite different, where a normal company at the moment, those losses would either stay in the company or they'd just flow out to me. But with the new look-through company, it's going to be profit as well, will have to automatically flow through to me. I can't choose to to keep that in the company. So quite different. And also if I sell my shares, that gain flows through to me. It's like I've sold the assets in the business, where normally if you sell shares in a company, it doesn't actually affect the company, but in this case it's like selling your shares and selling everything that's involved in that company. So very, very different.
So how does it differ between LTC and LAQC?
LAQC. Well, in LAQC at the moment, like the losses would flow through to you personally in your tax return. But in a look-through company, it's going to be that I'm going to be limited in the losses that I might be able to actually claim, depending on what equity I've got in the business. So, I mean, very simplistically, if I only had $50,000 equity in the business, it might be that my losses are limited to $50,000 over the time of filing my tax returns. And once I've used that, I might not be able to get any further losses. So that's very, very basic, but that's sort of the things that we need to be looking at just to see what the best structure is.
It all seems a little bit complicated.
It is actually, it is quite complicated, which is why I really stress that you really talk to your accountant about this, because we really don't want people to be falling into something that they don't really know what they're doing. So we have got a 2-year transition period. So from the 1st of April, you've got until the 30th of September to choose what you want to do for that financial year, and as long as you've chosen within that first 6 months, so say to September, then you'll be the new structure for that year, so you can still gain your losses. But if you do nothing, then if you were sort of having losses in your company, you won't be able to use those losses in that first year. So it is really timely to make sure we do something. So yeah, go and talk to your accountant. If they don't really know what the rules are, most of them should, then there's information on the website, or you can contact us at WHK. We've actually got a specialised team that we're getting to review all our clients that are LAQCs, and we're actually giving them a report on what they should actually be doing. So case by case, we're reviewing that and saying, these are all the structures, this is why we think you should go with this structure, so that they're actually making an informed decision.
Cool, thanks Michelle for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Michelle Malcolm from WHK in Tauranga. Well, that is all for Central News for the week. Remember, we always like to receive your feedback and hear any stories that you have for us. Email us here at news@tvcentral.co.nz, or hop on the website tvcentral.co.nz, where you can also upload photos and footage. Well, that's it for another week. I'm Katrina McKinley. Have an awesome weekend, and I'll see you next week.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand.